You better be listening to Sleazoids or I must break you.
There is a passageway to the most evil place you can imagine. A gate behind which the demons wait to take back what was once theirs.
Universal Pictures is proud to present the motion picture directing debut of one of America's most talented and respected artists.
Cut! Cut, 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 cut! Oh, hello, kiddies. So glad you could join me. Your pal, the Crypt Keeper, has gone Hollywood in a big way.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Sleazoids, the podcast where we go down the rabbit hole of 20th century genre fare, from the most influential canon classics to the trashiest exploitation films we can get our hands on, and invite you to tag along in helping us create a canon of sleaze. Each week is a double feature grindhouse style where we discuss two films loosely related by subject, genre, actor, filmmaker, or franchise, and at the end of each episode, along with our honorary Sleazoids, which you can become by subscribing on Patreon.
Next week, we're talking some of our favorite filmmakers, but getting a little weird with it, going science fiction fantasy mode, which we haven't done in a while. So join that sleaze, baby.
Yeah, we decide on all the official ratings and rankings for every film that we cover, and Patreon subscribers also get an on-air shout out and 2 bonus episodes every single month, which we have been doing for coming up on 5 full years of bonus episodes. There's like 120, 130 plus, as well as our bonus transmission series where we talk about new release genre films. So if you haven't made the jump yet, patreon.com/Sleazoids podcast. And speaking of which, we did have a few people make the jump this week, so we'll give them their shout outs here. We had Jordan Sekarecha, we had Brian Blake, we had D. Metcalf, we had Tim C., Ryan Fallon, Ben Jessup, and Michael. So thanks so much to you folks. Hope you're enjoying all those bonus episodes. We really appreciate the support. That's the one plug for the week. The other plug, as always, is Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you are listening on either one of those platforms, and I see the stats, I see you right now listening on both of those platforms. The Crypt Keeper's coming for you. Please give us a good old review. Yeah. Please give us a good old rating and review down at the bottom. Helps us climb the ranks and find new listeners. And the last plug for the week, as always, is merch. If you like the poster art that based out of Toronto horror artist Trevor Henderson did for the show, you can get that put on basically anything that you can think of. A notebook, a pillow, a hoodie, a pen. You guys have bought a lot of different stuff from us, and that link is in the description, as well as over at sleazoidspodcast.com. But that is it for the intro. Welcome back to another week. As always, I am your host, Josh Lewis, and joining me also, as always, is my co-host,
Jamie Miller. Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome. I think 2 weeks ago would have been the last time you folks over on the main feed would have heard from us, and we would have been doing our last main feed episode of Noirvember, where we had Trash Fiend and regular Sleazoids guest rotation member Steve Carlson make his 4th or 5th appearance on the show to talk about some noirs, some very specific noirs that take place during wartime in the 40s and are about the power of writing letters. We talked about Le Corbeau from 1943, which had a little bit of sort of like a community paranoia, very Fritz Lang's M style definitely. Kind of film to it. And we paired that with 1944's Address Unknown, which is probably, I mean, Noirvember is always bleak, but probably one of the more like shockingly bleak and reckoning with Nazism during its rise.
Not turning into a family vengeance, I guess. Spoilers a little bit there, but it's very dark, very, very depressing.
Yes, practically a revenge film by the final frame, which compared to the more family-friendly kind of opening it has is quite a journey, we'll say.
Yes.
So if you haven't heard that episode 2 weeks ago over on the main feed for all listeners, we talked about those with Steve. And then last week over on the bonus feed exclusively on the Patreon, we did a huge wrap-up for Noirvember. We had to do it. We had to talk about noirs and neo-noirs that take place in the vicinity of fixed boxing matches, which, believe it or not, there are 2 noirs that fit that specific genre. One, The Setup from 1949, directed by Robert Wise. More kind of invested in kind of like the humane sort of drama of being an aging boxer and the brutality on his body and the industry itself. And then Brian De Palma's Snake Eyes from 1998, which is a much more
Lot of energy.
bombastic, full-on assassination conspiracy thriller with a performance from Nicolas Cage that is basically just as manic and out of control as De Palma can feel at times.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So many great oneers and split screens and different perspectives. It's awesome.
Yeah, everything that you could hope for out of Brian De Palma making a studio conspiracy noir starring Nicolas Cage. So if you haven't heard that episode, patreon.com/Sleazoids podcast. That was last week's bonus episode. But moving on to this week, we have a very special returning guest that we had on during the early days of the show. And it's been kind of an oversight that we haven't managed to bring her back on yet, because we talked, I think, originally about Savage Street and Stage Fright, which was a lot of fun and definitely an early episode any new listener should go back and check out at some point. She is a genre movie enthusiast and illustrator. She makes these amazing little miniatures that you can find online of like old basement movie collections and libraries and indie video rental stores. And she is also
awesome.
a game designer who may or may not have done some work on an upcoming entry in a little game series called Silent Hill. You might have heard of this. That
Crazy.
guest is Melissa Kay. Melissa, how are you doing? Welcome back.
I'm great. Thanks for having me again, you guys. It's definitely been a few years, I think.
Yeah,
It has been. Yeah, and when I looked at that, my first thought was, is that right? We really liked the episode we had her on. Have we not asked her back to come on yet?
I think that was like 2018, even like a very long time ago.
That was the first year of the show. So yeah, it's been a long time. We've grown a lot. You've been doing a lot of stuff. We're very excited to have you back. And as we do it, Melissa, we have the guests obviously choose the double features that they bring on. But we had a little bit of an interesting process on getting this one out. So because you kind of threw a list at me of titles like you were shooting a shotgun in my direction, and I kind of just chose two that kind of made sense to me. But if you would like to introduce the two films we're talking about and maybe loosely why they might work together, even though I kind of chose them.
Absolutely. Well, they're actually two of one of my favorite films of all time, and I call them my chicken soup for the soul movies because they're extremely rewatchable, and they're just very nostalgic and very comfort feeling movies. And they are The Gate from 1987, and of course, Tales from the Crypt, Demon Knight, an all-timer from 1995.
Yeah, well, and I was struck too when you sent them to me because I actually hadn't seen Demon Knight, and I was kind of just going off the title out, and I was kind of like, well, The Gate has little demons in it, and Demon Knight, I'm assuming like the title's got to have little demons in it. I was actually quite surprised that they both actually have a little bit of a sort of wacky practical effect kind of sensibility to them, and also in like an age-old darkness versus light war kind of happening, and also we're both doing a little bit of siege violence to its character. So I was surprisingly like, hey, these two actually pair together better than I expected. So yeah, we're that being said, I think we're really excited to get into these ones. So let's kick things off. Let's start off with The Gate.
Demons, what kind?
You've been bad.
They have opened the gate. Pray it's not too late.
All right, we are talking about The Gate, the 1987 supernatural horror film directed by one Tibor Tak, who you might be wondering, is that how you say his name? And I was like, I'm not 100% certain. My dad is kind of like Hungarian, and I was like, I think that's right based on the few Hungarian relatives that I've met.
We're going with it.
But but despite the Hungarian name, he is actually a Canadian filmmaker, and I was super stoked that Mosa brought on like a Toronto film and a Toronto filmmaker, actually very involved in the Toronto art scene. First as a punk and metal band manager / producer, including bands like the Vile Tones and the Cardboard Brains. But while at the University of Toronto, eventually, due to access that he had to film and foreign film in Toronto, and getting also into music videos and short films and all kinds of stuff, he apparently did a science fiction musical called Metal Messiah, starring some of his musician friends. That was his first. This is why it's not considered his debut film. This is his studio debut film, is what they say, because he made so many indie films. But yeah, he eventually hooked up with a local Canadian producer who offered him a look at a number of scripts that he had the rights to, and The Gate was the one that he was attracted to. He said because he liked the sort of fairy tale quality that it had, and the sort of, getting together with your friends during your development when you're sort of creatively free. And I think he said something along the lines of, I feel like you have to experience fear when you're young because it opens up the floodgate to your imagination. So nice. Thus The Gate
I love that.
Was born. But Melissa, this is a favor for you. Was this something that you watched in like the video era? Was this like a rewatch with friends kind of film? What was your experience with The Gate?
So this was one of my early first horror films. I remember watching it when I was like 8 or 9, and it was definitely scary to me at the time, but it was one of those that really enticing, that fascinated me because it is scary for kids, like it's a kid's movie, but it's pretty dark, but I was obsessed with it. And I got into these like stages where I would watch certain movies on repeat, this being one of them, Kindergarten Cop being another. Nice. And and so I watched it all the time as a kid, and then I kind of stopped watching it a little bit when I got to college because I had gotten rid of my tapes at that point. I didn't have like a physical copy. And then I ended up getting back into collecting tapes, and I finally secured another copy, and then it was just watching it again all the time. So for me, it's very nostalgic, and it feels like home.
Yeah. Well, I could definitely see that, because Jamie and I actually just watched it together for the first time last year, because we kind of had a little bit of like a group of friends. We'd get together and each person would try to like pick a movie none of the other people had seen, but they had. And this happened to be one of the ones that they kind of introduced us to. And my first impression of it was, one, it's a lot of fun. It's surprising.
So fun.
In terms of how well sort of like made it is on an effects level, it kind of blew me away. And my main sort of, if I had any gripe with the movie, I kind of just was like, man, I kind of wish I watched this when I was younger. I think it would have had a little bit more of an impression when I was kind of in that mode, for like, you were making the transition from, you're kind of watching kids movie, and then you watch your first kids movie that's too dark, and you're kind of like, oh, this is like, there's some like Italian horror gore, and maybe not quite on that extreme of a level.
Vibes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like in terms of children in peril genre films that we've covered on this show, it reminded me immediately of something like Phantasm.
Yeah.
Just because of that.
I love pairing those together. They're so good.
Yeah. And I think that film, I think, has a little bit more going on with, just in terms of being used as kind of like a metaphor for the coming of age quality of the kid learning to deal with, some mortality and loss that he's going through and stuff like that. But I do think that in terms of set pieces, this is very, very comparable. Like once this gets weird and it starts merging the weird family friendly vibes where you think you should be watching a nicer movie than you are, and then all of a sudden you're getting legit body horror. This is like a really effective and fun movie to watch.
Yeah, definitely.
I
mean, that first time, it's, I think it's a good probably 55 minutes in, but when you see the dad's face melt when he's hugging him and thinking that he's actually his dad returning from the vacation. It's crazy. And then not only that, but his head falls off, and it's like a rotting head that just kind of squishes into the cement. And I can't remember exactly, but there might even be like bugs on it and everything like that. I could imagine if I was watching this at 9 years old, I'd be just pretty devastated. Like, this is absolutely terrifying, especially the build-up.
It was terrifying.
It does take its time, and I don't mind the first half at all. I do think it takes a little bit too much time to get to all the crazy effects and kind of the more exciting element of it. But I do like how like mean every single teenager is in this to all the kids. I think that's like it really makes the kids feel like that kind of that
I was thinking of
isolation.
Night of the Demons a little bit as well, just with people just being nasty to each other.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
Right?
definitely. All the language is there that you'd expect from an 80s film, you know?
Good and bad.
Yeah, of course. But there is something to watch, like when he stands up for himself and you're looking at a 10-year-old say like just shit he shouldn't be saying. There's something about that I don't know if it's charming exactly, but it's one, it's a thing of the times, and two, there's just like a kind of like he's breaking free from the childhood, I guess, that he's having.
Well, he's being edgy and juvenile a little bit
At the same time. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's his like interpretation of how to be adult, you know, how to act like he's
Right.
mature when he really isn't. Like that's what I'm saying. So, but yeah, that like all the elements at the beginning, I think, do eventually accent the like last 30 minutes of just pure creature effects and body horror and yeah, just it's a lot of fun. And I love. We'll get to all these details, but like I like that he infused the metal element as well, like with the album. And we'll get to some of that.
Such an impression on me. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That was one of my favorite parts.
Yeah, so like again, as a result, you have this Toronto-based metal musician turned filmmaker who liked this idea of, you know, sort of like kid hijinks and these punk kids wrestling with you know, finding their imagination through this dark situation. So as a result, we have this story of three young children, for anyone who hasn't seen it, who accidentally essentially release a horde of nasty pint-sized demons from a large hole in their backyard suburb, and it has a little bit of that like sort of Spielberg or King sort of way of placing sort of childlike perspective into pop genre storytelling, like creature features. Even little baby Stephen Dorff, who's in this, he basically looks like he was cast because he looks like the kid from E.T.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
But it really does lean into the cruel body horror and almost Italian horror supernatural surrealisms at times. So I thought of things like Phantasm or something like Phenomena. I thought about a little bit as well, even though that maybe gets a little bit more extreme. People also compare this a lot to Poltergeist, just in terms of, again, sort of kids movie and horror kind of rubbing up against each other. But the opening, I'd say about half of this film, it's about 40 minutes or so, is still, you know, like I do think it's, you know, it's because it's a little on the, I guess what you could call the generic side. Sometimes that's why I think it just feels a little bit long, but it's still stylishly made. Like I think this CRYPT is like a pretty good director. Yeah. And the dreamy aspect of like the opening stuff when he's like riding his bike towards his house in this eerily abandoned suburb, and the TV is on and the dinner table's been abandoned, and you get these like elegant tracking shots and creepy shadows as he climbs the treehouse into the backyard, and lightning storm strikes it and he falls, and all of those disruptive sounds become actually him in his bed listening to them like tear down a tree in his backyard. And like that's just, you know, like clever sort of, you know, the formal creativity that, you know, that definitely is you can find throughout the entire film.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I love the beginning. It has this like dreamy, uncanny valley vibe that like it almost puts me to sleep. And I remember falling asleep a lot just to the first 40 minutes and then waking up at the end and be like, whoa, what's happening? But the beginning is very like comforting, kind of sleepy, but there's like something a little off-putting, uncanny valley-ish about it because, like you said, like it's pretty much abandoned. Everything just feels very contained.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then I feel like it's the first real big element for me of that kind of it's like the I guess the scary adulthood is coming to the film now. Is when the Terry, I believe is his name, his friend, sees his mother. And they have like all of this like light, like this really bright white lighting coming in, and there's kind of like wind that's flowing the gown and everything like that, and he embraces her. And then when they come out to see what Terry's doing, it actually ends up being the dead dog. And
oh god,
that
horrible.
Seems like such a big switch for the movie. There's still a little bit of like investigation that happens about like, if I'd say for like 10 minutes before the things really start to ramp up. But that was a moment where I'm like, wow, they actually, at least momentarily, killed off the dog in this kind of like Spielberg-ish family horror movie, and it just was like it was pretty cruel for what I thought was going to happen. So yeah, there's a lot of elements like that kind of lead up to it. But
Yeah,
I
and
do
there's some, like,
It
super
takes like a little too far.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely like a moment of shock in comparison to the more sort of supernatural implication that's happening, where it's like there's this big hole in the backyard that the tree came out of, and the kids are kind of excited by it and intrigued by it, and there's like primary colors leaking out of it, and like fog and stuff coming out of it. They find like this like geode rocks in there, and they're just kids kind of like having fun. And also his friend Terry is given a little bit of an edge to him by being this like angry,
Metalhead.
destructive, like confused metalhead of a kid who's always trying to get him in trouble, and he's like torturing bugs, which then turns into these shots where these creepy shots of like the bug zappers killing them and stuff like that. Like there's a sort of ominous atmosphere that is slowly cropping up in between the like teen hijinks or like the 80s glam rock party, where like one teen at the party is like, yo, somebody get this dog a beer, as the dog's like walking through the party. Like there's some really, sort of textbook kind of silly stuff happening, and throwing in these more sort of supernatural, sort of ominous feelings in there definitely is, helps you get through this element. I mean, there's even a part where like it's almost Nightmare on Elm Street, the wall starts coming alive, and and there's a hilarious like physical bit where like the hole is very clearly something is coming out of it and is alive in it, and they just like put some plywood over it, and they're like,
that was so great. They're like, we're good.
That'll stop the demons.
This'll do.
Yeah, and Terry's like, you know what, man? I think you got demons. I think that's what's going on. Like, I think your house. It's almost like he's saying your house has like rats or something.
Yeah,
that's because.
My favorite line that he says is when the sister comes up and he's just like, we accidentally summoned demons who used to rule the universe and want to take over the world. And he says it like incredibly just calmly, as if he's like, they've been on this investigation for a while, so they're kind of used to it. But yeah, I love some of the delivery from Terry. Terry's a great character.
Well, I love the scene where he figures it all out with the metal record, where he's like lip singing to the record that he loves. It's called The Dark Book by a band called Sacrifice. And what's the backstory he gives behind this band, where he's just like, yeah, I heard that they basically they studied demonology and they put out this record, and then they all died in like a plane crash or something like that.
Oh my god, it's awesome. And I love that they use all the classic tropes of like discovering something with a metal record. Like he first it's the kind of the symbolism through the lyrics, and then he at one point shows Glenn and plays it backwards, and he's like, these are the instructions on how to shut down the hole. And I love that they took all of that kind of like satanic panic stuff, I guess, that happened with Zeppelin and all of that, and just used it to, it's like the answers. They're giving them the answers to solve this problem.
Yeah, the kid uses the Bible at one point, and it doesn't work as well as playing the Satan record backwards.
Yeah. What I do love about the Bible part is that they're just reading anything that they possibly can, because they're not very familiar with it and don't know what to do. And at one point, they're just like, oh, fuck it, and just throw the whole Bible in the hole, and then it explodes like a holy hand grenade or something like that. It's absolutely
oh my god,
hilarious.
That was hilarious.
That's one of my favorite moments. They're just like, oh, we'll just toss the whole thing in there, and then it's like a grenade. It was great.
It's so great. Oh man. Yeah, that was like my first exposure to records, having hidden messages playing backwards, and then every time I saw that Trump going up, I'd be like, that's from the gate, and then I was like, oh, that's like a well-known thing. But as a kid, I was like, oh, you can summon demons if you play that backwards, Mom. Like, you shouldn't play that. Like, be careful.
That's awesome. This movie set off the satanic panic. I love it.
Yeah.
It did. And now awesome. I invite it in. Now I'm like, can this happen? No, just kidding.
and he discovers from this record that this little hole in his backyard suburb is actually the passageway between our physical world of light and pleasure and their spiritual world of madness and pain. And all of these demons are looking for their chance at revenge to put humans in their place, and they need a bunch of sacrifices. So around the 40 or 45 minute mark, these little tiny little demon guys
who look awesome.
just They do we'll get into it. The effects work in this is just pretty spectacular.
Yeah.
Basically, it's functionally at a certain point stops making sense and just becomes more of like a demo reel and a really impressive one. And there's lots of great gags and stuff in here. Like I do like the line where the kids are freaking out thinking that they finally figured out what's happening and that little demons might be coming for them. And the teen girls ring the doorbell to hang out with his older sister. And they're like, the demons aren't going to ring the doorbell. Like, come on. What are we talking? Like if they come, if these little dwarves pop out, they're going to come and they're just going to start, doing insane levels of violent hijinks, which they do eventually do. And they are, the giant slimy, like clawed hands popping out from underneath the bed is one of the first times that we see them. You get the exploding, melting phones. You get clones of his parents, which Jamie mentioned, where the dad tries to strangle him with the amazing "You've been bad."
Rotting head falls off.
Oh my God. Yeah. And then you get your first look at the little 10-inch tall little demons who chase them around in the very
They are my favorite thing in the whole world.
They are amazing. And it's this very tactile rendering of stop motion and forced perspective of guys in rubber suits.
Yeah. Like it's crazy. When I found that out, I was shaken because I swear I thought they were puppets.
Yeah, there's
like
a
it's
real
like
weight
they're
to
so
them.
good.
That's what, because I remember the first time I saw them, and like there's a ton of shots with them. They really use them. So there's some that are more convincing than others, but there are a couple in there that look legitimately like there are just a bunch of little 2-foot demons surrounding these kids, and it's really good work. And I was shocked by it the first time I watched it.
Yeah, the effects are by this guy named Randall William Cook, who did the creature and special effects work on Larry Cohen's Q, the Winged Serpent, also Tom Holland's Fright Night, and would go on to actually do a lot of the animated creature work for Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings films.
Damn!
And also, I think I saw him credited. Yeah, and I saw him credited too under Videodrome. It didn't seem like he was like a lead, but he might have done some makeup work on that.
Sweet.
I could see that.
Hope
but
he worked
regardless,
on the stomach. Anyway.
Yeah. An incredible combination of stop motion and forced perspective to create these convincing little creatures that are about as tall as our shins, but do have real weight of guys running around in rubber suits. So it's basically like old school Godzilla effects, but done in a sort of shooting style that would be more akin to like Joe Dante, like think like Gremlins or like Small Soldiers, like having these little guys interacting with these larger figures that are in the frame. And all of the imagery with them is just pretty spectacular to watch them pull on people. I like that one bit where there's the zombie, and the zombie just like who's like a construction worker who was stuck in the wall dead, and he just like falls on the floor at one point, and they do this amazing match cut to him smashing his body on the floor, and then all of the little demons like actually landing and exploding out of him and like doing rolls.
They
and
invented
amazing.
that trope.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. They also do one where one of the little demons gets his arm caught in the door, and then it kind of like falls off and then transforms into a bunch of maggots and crawls onto the door. There's a lot of cool little effects that they do, and what's cool about it is that it's constantly evolving. Like you said, it's almost like a demo reel. At a certain point, there's no real like rules that these demons have. They have magical powers, and they're gonna utilize them to the best of their abilities to kill everybody and unleash hell. Apparently, yeah, it's great.
So funny. They're my favorite little things. Random funny story about them. So I used to call them ankle biters. I was just obsessed with them. And then I found out a few years later that there is actually a movie out there called Ankle Biters that is about vampire little people.
Oh, yeah, never
Have
seen
you
that.
seen it?
Yes,
is it
course.
Good?
I think it's on YouTube. It's horrific. So yeah, it's amazing. I think the tagline is like 3 feet tall, 2-inch fangs. It's really funny.
That's an awesome
Don't ask me how I remember that.
Yeah, Yeah, but yeah, this is the second half of this film, as we basically mentioned, just becomes a series of set pieces. You have like purple light and smoke and like leaf blowers emanating from the hole at this point. You get like the one kid, Terry, gets sucked into it at one point, and there's these really cool shots of what's like clearly guys in rubber suits like attacking a giant leg prop that's his, almost like the effects work in like The Incredible Shrinking Man from the 50s or something like that. And you know, there's it definitely too, this combination of doing the stop motion and doing these guys running around in suits, it does make it feel like unnatural and creepy, some of the motions that they're doing, the way they're like yanking him into the hole or biting him, and at one point he even like picks one up and throws one as if like he is like the kaiju monster throwing around a human or something like that. Like it's really cool.
Yeah, definitely.
And having a history of just knowing these old school effects and seeing them in old monster movies, it definitely has an effect on the way that you're kind of watch this, and it makes it feel a little bit more sort of physically frightening at times, like especially when you're getting into the scenes of them, you know, like popping out of the hole and starting to become more overwhelming in force. Like at a certain point, you're just looking, you're staring down the lane at like 40 or 50. Yeah, you know, it's a lot.
It is. Oh,
that's before the big boy gets there.
Yes.
Yeah, which and he is just massive.
Yeah,
I have like
cool. He reminded me
idea
of like a lizard version of Goro from Mortal Kombat, because he's got the the 6 arms or whatever it is.
Same vibe.
Although this guy is like 100 feet tall. This guy is absolutely massive. This big.
I mean, is Goro not?
Oh, he's like 10 feet tall. I think he's pretty huge.
Maybe
this
like
thing
12.
is like the size of the whole house and the basement, and I guess it's coming from hell, so I would assume that body is pretty lengthy. But yeah, it's cool too. They use like, I guess that's claymation, I believe, what they do with the big guy.
I would assume it would have, and then like some miniature effects, I assume, with the house and stuff as well, because like at a certain point they're just blowing up the centerpiece of that that house and the foyer of it and everything like that. Like it just becomes like after the bit where there's like the Fulci zombified construction worker who's trying to attack them, and there's this whole section where I thought was really dark, and I kind of wish they stuck to a little bit, where where Steven Dorff had his friend Terry gets attacked by the construction worker. And I do love the detail that he previously made up the story about the construction workers dying in his house as like just to be mean to him, to scare him. And then it turns out that, you know, they're like, I just made that up, and now there actually is one. But then Steven Dorff has to, like, at one point they have to gouge out Terry's eyeballs with a Barbie because he's become zombified and stuff, and like that, like
the eyeball thing was very Fulci.
Yeah, well, and same with the eyeball that, like, when the giant monster grabs Steven Dorff's hand and like lifts him up in this amazing shot that I'm not exactly sure how they did.
Yeah,
like where it's straight. He actually interacts with the giant claymation monster in a little bit of like compositing work that they've done.
That was so cool. That's a connection to Demon Knight, the hand thing, I think. In some way.
Yeah, and then he has an eyeball grow out of his hand, and you're like, what?
Yeah. I also like that the rockets come into play, kind of just that whole childhood thing, using it as a weapon. I think that's absolutely awesome, and it takes a little bit too. You see him set it up a few times before he actually gets to set it off.
Where doesn't he like keep it under his bed, and he's like, "You'll just chill there for a while."
Yeah, they do a foreshadow scene where he's like disappointed because his sister's growing up and he's not going to get to play with it. Yeah, and he just kind of tosses it angrily behind the bed, and you're like, "Oh yeah, we'll never see that again." And then bam, the big boy shows up, and he's got to use it.
Yep.
His childhood will save him.
Yeah, and I love the build up to the big guy coming out too, where it's like literally it's a bunch of guys coming out of the little guys coming out of the hole, and they're standing there looking up, and you're like waiting for what they're looking at, and then he slowly rises in the full frame and everything like that. You're getting like these snap zooms on the minions watching on like the second floor balcony and stuff like that. They're like, our leader is here. We have summoned him.
I love that.
And yeah, the entire house just starts getting rocked. Everything just gets destroyed. And in order to take down this giant monster, he has to use his childhood rocket. And also they say it's because it represents love and light, because it was supposed to be a birthday gift to his sister or something like that. And he's just like, now instead it's going to blow up this giant demon in our house. And I think also the line that he says is, I think he wishes her a happy birthday while he explodes the demon.
He yells happy birthday. So badass, right? Oh my god.
And it even sends little Steven Dorff like flying out the front door of the house and like shooting lights and fireworks into the sky above him and everything like that.
I do like that that shot where it shows like all the darkness being turned into light throughout the whole sky. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, that was cool.
It's simple,
yeah,
of course,
definitely.
But it's magical, you know.
Yeah, I mean that's the kids movie aspect kind of coming back in, and that's the one thing where I don't know if it's like completely fair to ding it for, because it's technically what it's doing. It's just it's on the more like adult horror side of children's movies, but it is ultimately a children's movie, which is why also it does have this kind of sort of magical ending where the dog didn't die and his friend Terry didn't die and everyone's kind of okay, and there's this cute like despite how gnarly some of the actual horror was, there is like this we've defeated something and we have kept the darkness at bay with with our rockets and our friendship.
Good win.
I would have liked the scene after.
That's a lot of heart.
Yeah, I would have liked the scene after when they all hug each other to actually have the parents come home and be like, you still have to explain what the fuck just happened here.
Yeah, you're cleaning this house, by the way.
You have a giant hole in the front foyer that's leading to God knows where. Yeah, so but yeah, I like the I think it definitely earns that kind of happy ending, and the only thing that really bugs me about the film a little bit is just how long it takes to get to all the chaos, because I think the buildup is important. I just think at a certain point you kind of get it, and we want to go into all the creature effects and all of that. But I mean, it's an absolute blast of a film. I really do like it.
Yeah. No, I felt very similarly, where it was around the time that Terry was giving the second round of exposition about the metal album, and it was just because I was sitting there going, you know what, the metal album scene is so good, and you can see him figuring out all that information that he's about to tell us, and then we have a 5-minute scene where he tells it to little Steven Dorff, and I was going, oh, the filmmaking kind of already did this. I don't know that I needed to see this again, but it's but that ultimately like that is it for me. And if we are pivoting towards reductive rating round, this is like, for me, this is like the highest possible 3 that I could give. And I honestly am sitting here on the fence about it, because it's so well done. I want to just jump to the 4 on it. But I do think that for me, it was just, I feel like I missed the boat. I really wish that I was still like, if I was still in that mode where I was watching like E.T., and then one day I was like, well, this thing, people say it's sort of like, it's like the B-side of that, and I decided to like throw it on, I would have like had my world fucking rocked by this movie, I feel like. And so for me, it doesn't quite get to that Phantasm level for me, where I do get a little bit more out of the early stuff and a little bit more out of the character work than I do this, but this is like a very fun, weird, ostensibly family-friendly attempt to do Italian horror, and am I just like not going to like that? I don't think so. Like it has a like gleeful child punk attitude to it. Yeah, it's a gateway movie.
The young audience.
No pun intended. Sorry, it's a gateway.
No, that was good. It's a good pun right there.
It's a great gateway portal to hell movie for children's, with eyeballs growing out of hands and parents' heads turning into goop and the kids firing rockets at demons. And yeah, it was a pretty big financial success too for Tibor. So I'm definitely interested in going down the rabbit hole and seeing what he's been up to. But I was like, man, based on how he directed this, I kind of expected to see quite a few more credits than like the TV movie version of Sabrina the Teenage Witch and like some made for TV B monster movies for the Sci-Fi Channel with like giant spiders and snakes and mosquitoes. And actually now I looked this up, he's now doing Hallmark Christmas movies.
Incredible.
Though apparently he's just parted ways with Hallmark just this year to get into direct-to-video action, where he has latched himself on to the bro-y dude from Easy A and Never Back Down to be his...
Which one is that the Twilight guy?
Yes, Cam something. Cam,
yeah. I'm like,
yes.
I know him from Twilight.
Yes, so he's doing direct to video movies starring that guy next to actors like Tom Berenger and Randy Couture.
Oh my gosh!
So he has 2 of those coming out this year. So if anyone's interested,
I hope the passion goes over.
I will be watching.
Yeah.
That is what Tibor Tech is up to. But yeah, this is an absolute blast. So very, very high 3 for me. I'm gonna call this the Jamie 3. Which is
yeah, absolutely. I think I'm right there with you. I think this is great. I would highly recommend it to everybody. It just takes a little bit too long for me to get to all the crazy creature effects and all of that. But I do think like we said, the introduction is important. It just stretches it out a little bit too much. But I love the relationship between Terry and Glenn. I think their friendship is a lot of fun to watch, and them discovering all of this. And I love the like infusing metal and infusing those kind of satanic panic elements, like the reverse lyrics and the little booklet of lyrics that are like actually a spell to summon demons and stuff like that. I think that's great. I absolutely love it. So yeah, I'm gonna give it a strong 3. Don't have much more to add. I think this will be a movie that if I ever have kids, that I'll be showing it to them when I think they're ready to transition into some more adult stuff, because I think it's kind of perfect that way. It really is like that childhood film that morphs into something that you're going to eventually see with like Fulci and all that, with melting faces and creature effects and all that. So yeah, a strong 3 for now. We'll see if it ever gets better for me, but I still think it's great. A lot of fun.
for you, Melissa.
4.5.
Nice.
Hell yeah.
But my nostalgia, has biased me. I think if I did see it for the first time nowadays, I can completely see how the beginning would put you off a bit, because it does kind of drag. But like for me, it feels fine because I grew up with it. And
it's also short. It's like 85 minutes long, so it's not.
It is short.
It doesn't really feel like a
Exactly.
drag. Exactly. It's just, I guess, it's a little just more than what you made me want, especially once you see all the creature effects. You're
Well,
like,
I'd
"God
say
damn,
it's
that's so fun."
it's just it's a tiny bit sleepy and repetitive, just considering
Yeah.
how simple the premise is. Like, I feel like you
Right.
kind of get it like 20 minutes before the characters get it, and then you kind of watch them piece
Yeah.
it together, and then it explodes. And when it explodes, it's a blast.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I totally get. And the only notes I have left here before we wrap it up was, one, we didn't hit the line, but we needed to say it. We accidentally summoned some demons who used to rule the universe to come take over the world. And yeah, we found out about it from one of Terry's albums.
I think
Just
I said
hilarious
the first part there, but I actually forgot about the. We found out about it from one of Terry's albums. I think that's great. I think that's
Oh
Yes.
man, that was so good.
I just
Yeah,
love the
Terry
the
also-
inspired metal stuff. It's great.
Yes, also
I had a
wearing
crush on Terry when I was a kid.
Hell yeah, that's awesome.
That's awesome. Terry the Metal Kid, who's wearing, by the way,
Terry's
a
the
Killer
man.
Dwarfs jacket in the film, which is the heavy metal band from Toronto that
Yeah.
that Tibor Tak apparently knew. So very cool, very cool. But
Very
yeah, if you haven't
awesome.
seen The Gate, check it out. See what Steven Dorff of Blade fame was doing when he was a child.
Right. This was his first movie.
Yeah. But that, I think, is going to wrap it up for The Gate. We are going to be right back, and we're going to be talking about Demon Knight. Stick around.
William Sadler from Die Hard 2, and Jada Pinkett from Menace to Society. Ooh, I love those titles. And you'll love Demon Knight.
They're here! The demons are here!
And ladies, if you think Demon Knight is too gross and yucky,
Whoa!
thank you.
All right, we are back, and we are talking Demon Knight. Or sorry, Tales from the Crypt presents Demon Knight.
That's right.
The 1995 supernatural horror comedy film directed by Ernest Dickerson, and obviously a feature film spin-off of the horror anthology television show from HBO, Tales from the Crypt. And this is actually going to be our first time, I think, talking about Ernest Dickerson, which I actually thought was kind of surprising. I mean, we had to have covered something he shot at some point. We had to have mentioned his name, I feel like, at some point. He's a legendary New Jersey cinematographer, best known for his pretty iconic collaborations with Spike Lee, including Do the Right Thing and Malcolm X, two of Spike's, like, obviously just best looking movies. But he also did a lot of his, like, early foundational breakout stuff as well, like She's Gotta Have It, and his college comedy that I see fewer people kind of talk about, but School Days, which is an incredibly colorful and musical film that more people should check out. And he's also obviously directed some pretty excellent episodes of The Wire. But before doing that, he met, and before then he even met Spike. He was doing some student short films, and he got his start actually doing music videos, which I think speaks to hugely his directorial output, that is very musical or very music video inspired in terms of some of the way that he shoots, in terms of some of his casting choices. Take, for example, he did his big two other films are Juice, which stars Tupac in a crime film, and his other one is Snoop Dogg in a horror film called Bones.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Great film, actually.
Yeah. But between those two films, he did this complete banger oddity of a feature film adaptation of Tales from the Crypt, which has a insane production history. No idea how this ended up getting made, because apparently
like
it wasn't
years almost, it seems.
It took forever, because I'm assuming most people are going to be familiar with Tales from the Crypt. It is the horror anthology series based on the 1950s EC Comics, and with an insane lineup of Sleazoids core guest directors, including Russell Mulcahy, Walter Hill, Toby Hooper, John Frankenheimer, William Friedkin, Robert Longo, and of course a bunch of regular producers that are very, very well-known producers on the show, like Robert Zemeckis and Richard Donner and Tom Holland. And the series is obviously hosted by the Crypt Keeper, this wisecracking corpse who basically pops out of his coffin at the beginning of every episode to just do terrible puns and to bookend whatever horror short that he is going to be introducing that week with hello, boys and boils and ghouls is the one that he usually does. Yes, it's wonderful. I love his voice. It's so like weirdly sassy and funny, done by this actor named John Kassir. But before Tales from the Crypt, this was supposed to just be a straight up independently made horror feature. And it was written completely independently of Tales from the Crypt. It started out actually as a Tom Holland of Fright Night and Child's Play fame, just a film straight up that he was going to make. And he got as far into it as actually doing some of the design and effects planning for it. And actually the guy who did the effects for Chucky ended up doing the effects on this film as a result. But it also, at one point, ended up in the makers of The Hands of Pumpkinhead before being delivered to Mary Lambert, who did Pet Sematary. And then I think at one point, Charles Band of Full Moon Pictures was trying to scrape the money together to make it. That didn't end up happening. So it took like forever. It took nearly a decade for just like this really cool script that they had that was like part siege Western film, part like demon splatter pulp movie, and for whatever reason
too, in a way,
comedy. Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's what I was wondering. I kept wondering, like, how many times did this script change in terms of tone by the time it hit Tales from the Crypt?
Kind of like a romance, you know?
Yeah. It's a really interesting just path to existence, and also just in terms of what it's doing stylistically and what it is tonally. And for anyone who hasn't seen it, it is about this ex-soldier named Frank Breaker, played by William Sadler, who is the titular demon knight. He is the guardian of an ancient key that might contain the blood of Jesus Christ. And he is being hunted by the Collector, played in this film by Billy Zane, but it is kind of suggested that the demon knight and the Collector keep changing forms, and this battle has been kind of happening Old Testament style for many centuries. But the Collector is chasing him in order to get this artifact from him and then initiate the apocalypse. But this film mostly centers on basically like almost like a John Carpenter-esque like Siege, Assault on Precinct 13 scenario, where Breaker ends up in New Mexico, where he just kind of hangs out in a boarding house, and with the help of a bunch of character actors playing the various residents of the boarding house, he puts them through a Sam Raimi Evil Dead splatter movie scenario, and bam, that's your movie.
Yeah, I gotta say, I do like the tone is very like classic horror haunted house kind of thing. Like it's always storming, it's raining, it's nighttime the entire time that this movie takes place. You know, they and I like how cartoonish all of the characters are. They're almost caricature-esque. Right. And even the way that they're dressed, I think it probably comes from, and I haven't really read them, so I don't know, but they come from comic books. And I know this one specifically isn't, but just the style, like Tales from the Crypt. I imagine that they'd have comics. Like just more obvious and maybe even stereotypical ways that people like dress and stuff like that. For instance, the like Roach, he's got leather pants and a white like mesh shirt and a Hawaiian open shirt, that kind of thing. They're very like flamboyant characters, I guess. And even like Breaker, he's got the leather jacket and like the rough 5 o'clock shadow look and all of that. It's just it reminded me of something more, I guess.
It almost feels off type for Sadler playing this like weary leading man, kind of drifter, kind of badass kind of character. I'm so used to like Bill and Ted Sadler.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Playing death. Yeah. Totally.
Playing it up a little bit sillier. Yeah, but no, this is really interesting because it opens and you're like, okay, so this is straight up, this is a Tales from the Crypt episode extended to feature length. It has the same low angle push in on the decrepit Gothic mansion on the stormy night. You go past the rickety, dust-covered staircase into the sort of candle-lit crypt. The crypt keeper does his little cackle. The slime drips on the screen. Everyone is getting nostalgic. You know, everyone's being like, "Oh, the intro I know and love." But then it turns into this weird, like, sort of book. It's bookended by this meta comedy about the idea of the crypt keeper, being a. Filmmaker. Like, it's revealed in this opening scene where the crypt keeper is like making this crappy horror film that is like this beautiful naked woman is like murdering her husband by dissolving him in acid.
And even this has that tone of like comedy like we were talking about, where she's just like, yeah, I've been thinking about killing him for so long. It was almost better than sex. Like that kind of shit. Like, it's just so over the top. And
then she's like, well, maybe not better, you know. And as you get like the husband who's like acidically falling apart and like leaving body parts everywhere he steps or moves to walk up to the bathroom to kill her.
Goopy.
And I love that he eventually gets called to action to like straight up slice her up, and the crypt keeper stops it. He's just like, no, this is terrible. You call this acting? You're no Gory Cooper, my friend. Already doing his shitty puns. And I think he says another take like that and it'll be nothing but bit parts for you, sir.
Yeah.
Right.
I like the way they use him too, because the crypt keeper, he's got like, they have two ways they use him. One where he's actually walking, and I think they do that kind of like some type of imposing or stop motion or something like that. But then they'll have him in front of something like an object so that they can actually have the robot move around, because he is, I think, an animatronic or a puppet of some kind a lot of the time.
Right.
And he looks puppeteered. Great. Yeah, I absolutely love him. I think he's a great character.
Your pal has gone Hollywood in a big way. Frights, camera, action.
It's so fun.
So great.
Yeah,
sorry, I blame him for my sense of humor.
Yeah. You know what? When I was a kid, I always tell this anytime it pops up on the show. The Video Movie Shop. This movie was actually one of the big cutouts that I would see every time I walked into it, and so the Crypt Keeper was always this like kind of scary, but he always had a smile on his face, so I was curious about him. I was just like, why are you like so happy about being the creepiest looking thing I've ever seen in my life? But then I finally watched something with him and just kind of fell in love with him. And yeah, I think maybe the puns might have spilt over to me a little bit, unfortunately, but It is what
Same.
it is. He's an inspirational
Bad humor.
character, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, and as a character design, he kind of strikes that tone that you're looking at, where it is legitimately kind of creepy and gruesome, but it's just silly enough that you're kind of like, well, that's a bit strange. That's a bit off. There's something happening here, and I think it's really cool because when he introduces the film that you're about to watch, it is straight up like pulling off like this like Western imagery. Like it is a highway drifter, William Sadler, last talked about again as Death in the Bill and Ted movies. And he's in a car chase through New Mexico with this collector, this demon played by Billy Zane. And incredibly, if this film is it shouldn't be the only basis, but even if it was, an incredibly underrated actor who deserved a much bigger career than he ended up having.
Awesome.
Oscar-worthy performance.
Yeah, I mean, like, and this is pre-Titanic for him, so like, I would have recently really enjoyed him around this time in Twin Peaks, but also we also did it as part of our group watch, the film Dead Calm.
I've never seen that.
It's a home invasion thriller, but on a boat with Sam Neill and Nicole Kidman, where he plays kind of like the psycho charmer who makes his way onto their boat. And a lot of the people who worked on it were George Miller's team. So it's almost like a quasi home invasion Mad Max on the water type movie. And Billy Zane
I'm literally writing this down to watch immediately.
Because he's kind of, it's interesting is he's doing something, not the same by any means, but he's playing something similar where he's charming and good looking, and he's using that as a way to get into some type of place, whether it be somebody's life or in this case a building, so that he can get the last relic or the last key or whatever. But I love that Billy Zane is at least in the few times that I've seen him kind of using that to his advantage. His handsome eyes, he's trusting, and then he's not.
Right? Yeah. He's got like the little smile. And then he's like, don't worry about me. I'm just your handsome little cowboy next door.
But then also he's like totally hamming it up in this. He's like he's the most cartoonish out of everybody because he's kind of playing this character, I guess, that's been doing it for so long. So he's every single chance he gets, he makes jokes. He's kind of doing the Crypt Keeper thing a little bit, but with more charm, and he's kind of. He's cooler, definitely. he's not quite as punny, but he's always making jokes about whatever situation is going on.
Oh yeah, like Billy Zane being like, "Do me a favor, don't scream. Just hear what I've got to say, and then scream."
Yeah.
It's so great. Oh, my perfect sense of humor. I mean, it has like Beetlejuice vibes.
For sure.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and what's cool is that I think that somehow the movie becomes that out of what it is in the beginning, and it doesn't feel like it like breaks the movie or it's like a huge shock. I mean, there is one big shock that kind of triggers the movie that you're about to watch, and we'll get to it. But it, like the opening, it's this road movie cowboy desperado, like firing repeaters and cars are on fire.
They even have Dick cowboy Miller hats on, or at least
yes,
Billy does.
Right.
Dick Miller shows up. So, yes. And Dick Miller shows up, speaking of Joe Dante's perhaps influence on a little bit of The Gate, as this like helpful local drunk named Uncle Willie, who takes him in to what is a decommissioned church that turns out to be sort of like this motel / boarding house. And you have a bunch, like a murderer's row of character actors in this place. You have CCH Pounder, you have Jada Pinkett Smith, you have Dick Miller again, you have Thomas Hayden Church. Like it's pretty nuts, the amount of character. You have the creepy dude from Zodiac. I always forget his name.
Yes.
But his face will forever be impressioned in my brain just from the basement scene from Zodiac. And soon this place is to, be the home of a siege horror movie with an insane amount of just gore and manic energy. But before then, you do get like this little bit of a goofy sense of humor. You get the like CCH Powder being like, "Get that pussy off the table." and they're like, "Is she talking to the local
campy.
Prostitute? Is he talking to the cat?"
I meant the cat. Yeah.
Thomas Hayden Church as a dude named Roach getting his nipples smoked by a car battery. You have Sadler is eating like slop out of a bowl, and Dick Miller is like, and he asks Dick Miller if he wants some, and he's like, "Hell no, I'm just thinking about how much better that stuff looked when it was roadkill." And yeah, you have Zane who shows up at this motel with the two sheriffs, and they arrive under the impression that Breaker is actually the bad guy because Zane is so charming. He's convinced everyone that he is the cowboy hero. He's the pretty boy. He looks like he should be the hero in a film, whereas Sadler has that character actor, sort of like weirder facial features that make him seem a little creepier.
Harder around the edges. Yeah.
And it's funny because Zane is very much doing what Rutger Hauer does in The Hitcher. He's very
100%. They even have like the same jacket, you know?
Yes, and he's constantly like just escalating the situation and managing to somehow frame the other characters. He's not the bad guy, and Zane is obviously weaponizing his pretty boy charm and slowly doling out some of the supernatural implications in the periphery of the film that are going to break into this mythological Old Testament war that we are about to experience. And then and I had to calculate where this was because this is my first time watching it. So my jaw legitimately dropped at exactly the 25-minute mark in this film where Zane drops the act and he goes, fuck this cowboy shit. You fucking
punk shit.
The fucking hoedown, podunk, well them there motherfuckers.
And he does that little dance. Oh, it's so great.
And he punches his fist through the arresting cop's face and out the back of his skull. And it's such a chunky effect. And his fist goes so deep into his head that it gets stuck and he can't pull it out. And I sat there and I went, how did this movie not spark a new screenwriting rule that 25 pages in, someone gets a fist punched through straight up through their face and out the back of their skull? Because it's a huge shock. And I went, oh shit, this is a different movie than I thought it was. And we're in it now, whatever it is.
Yeah, and it's already shocking as it is, but then he's like, I think he punches somebody else with the head attached to his fist.
Yes.
And then
he tears it off and uses it as a boxing glove.
Yeah,
it's
and then
so
just
amazing.
tosses it at the other cop, and the cop like grabs it and fumbles it and juggles it around. Like it's just, and once again, it still has kind of that wacky tone, even though the violence was it's completely cranked up to 11 at this point, and it never stops either. Because once he's revealed to be the collector, this demon or whatever, it's pretty much a non-stop siege film where there's like different applications to how they use the demons, and there's ways eventually, and we'll get to all this in detail, but where Zane's character is able to put them into this like dreamscape where he can possess them, and then he's kind of able to use their body as
bringing their fantasies to life.
Yes.
And then even and this is going to happen very soon, and we'll get to talk about this, where they grow the demons out of the ground, and they actually show like each step of like the goop and all of that until they're finally the ones that you see throughout the film. After he punches this cop, it just goes and goes and goes. It's awesome.
Yeah, and the special effects artist here, Kevin Yeager, he did the creature effects for Nightmare on Elm Street 2, 3, and 4, as well as Bill and Ted 2, Child's Play, and The Hidden, which I was like, damn,
The Hidden.
Awesome.
The Hidden is amazing.
Oh my god,
Yes.
Favorite Kyle MacLachlan.
Yeah, that movie
it's so good.
Outside of Twin
good.
Peaks.
Holy hell.
Oh god.
Yeah, so it's genuinely incredible monster and gore effects that are incredibly tactile and sticky, and in comparison to The Gate, we'll say, because this isn't trying to be a kid's film at all, like incredibly disgusting and like dangerous feeling, despite the fact that they exist in what is like kind of a cartoon reality. Like it gets to the point like where it's beyond Sam Raimi. It is like it reminds me more of what was that Chow Yun-Fat movie, The Seventh Curse, I think it was called.
Oh yes,
totally.
Where the level of gore to it was more shocking because the tone didn't seem like it fit with it, and it was actually almost more disturbing, that you were like, this feels like it should be in a much scarier movie, and as a result it feels like every character is open to just being shredded or torn apart at any moment. And obviously Dickerson too.
Yeah, no one feels safe.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dickerson is known for his colorful and, expressionism of his shooting style. Like he has this ability to capture moments of like passionate heat, or even moments of kind of what feel almost like surreal or kind of magical moments in even his drama films. And in interviews, he cites people like Powell and Pressburger as inspirations. He loves like The Red Shoes and Black Narcissus he describes as like key pieces of visual inspiration, which is so funny. Then you watch what he directed and you're just like, I don't know if I see it exactly, but you see it in the energy and the color, and you know, like he does use some Italian horror, like deep primary color lighting in here, but just how this thing moves and the way that it pops, and it's really unbelievable to watch the canted angles and the tracking maneuvers that he does, and while maintaining a level of kind of like juvenile genre junkie glee to the whole thing. Like it legitimately just starts becoming bombastic.
Yeah, I love like, because I was talking about how dark the entire thing is, but I love that because every time he brings out a new color, it just pops and it's vibrant. Like when he does grow the demons out of the ground, it's like a neon green, and then there's stuff where they'll have conversations next to an open window, and there's the neon signs that are outside of the newly formed, I guess, hotel or whatever that this church is now being turned into. And you know, the blue just shines in on their face. It looks really nice, and yeah, just kind of everything pops when things go down, like or when they use the eyeballs. They have to shoot them in the eye, and every single time that they do that, there's just this like green burst of light that spurts out of their eyes before they explode. So there's just these constant things that come up. And I also like, speaking of the eyes, is that there's these. And they kind of make a joke about it later on, Billy Zane does, but that one of the rules is to shoot them in the eye. It just causes more chaos. There's even one shot where one of the demons takes like 5 headshots and then laughs at them before they finally pop him in the eye and he explodes. So they just kind of they dive into the excuses of like, just how much violence can we bring into this cartoonish crazy event that we're showing you. And yeah, it's just so much fun.
So fun. It's a great gateway horror film to show people. I was talking about this with my friend the other day, how, you know, like it does have over the top gore and special effects and like kind of legit scary for the funny tone, which I think makes it a great gateway film for people that like maybe aren't into horror yet. Yeah, because you can still have fun even though you're watching bodies just get torn apart. Like when Thomas Hayden Church like gets ripped apart. There's also the mix of Billy Zane doing his charming like devil thing where he's just like, oh, by the way, I lied, and then just ripping him to shreds. And like even the effect is kind of funny in a way where you know, it's horrific because you're watching these demons just tear him down to the ground, and then it implies heavily that all the gushing spurts, just flying out of them, flying as if they're like just pumping it through something, and it's just it's that perfect blend of like cartoonish kind of wacky comedy, but then also just insane over the top gore that you. And as you mentioned too, like dealing so much in like archetypes you're kind of familiar with, but then putting those archetypes into a situation that's so, you know, strange for them and so wacky, and so like as a result, the lighting choices and the canted angles start to make more sense when you're watching like what appears to be like a bunch of characters who would be in like a hangout Western movie are all of a sudden surrounded like Prince of Darkness style, and the property has been condemned and impending doom is in, and like there's luminescent radioactive green goo blood just like going into the sand, and out even go pops back to these the Jesus times. I forgot. Yeah, that stuff is fucking crazy. Like the fact that you're getting these images of these slimy, hairy, claw-like little monster creatures running around this motel, and green lasers are flying everywhere, and heads are flying, and all of a sudden, you know, he's doing things too, like even with the lighting, where he'll drop the red magic Jesus blood on certain places, and then everywhere will kind of light red with it as he's starting to seal the house and protect it from all of the demons. But yeah, when we start getting through flashbacks, which they dole out, I think, really, really well, because they just, I think it's his music video sensibility. He'll just have like something trigger it subjectively in his perspective, where all of a sudden, like, I think Thomas Hayden Church at one point is just, he's like using a sledgehammer on a door to try to break his way out, and all of a sudden it becomes the hammering of nails to go into a flashback where they're crucifying Jesus and putting him on the cross, and all of a sudden we're in this flashback where you literally have like the fucking you have these dudes
Yeah, like they're sitting there at Jesus's crucifixion, taking his blood and putting it into like a flask, essentially. And you have these hooded demons who are like trying to reach out and grab it and touch it, but they're being burned by it and everything like that. So you're literally getting some of the rules and some of the things that would normally be exposition and done in this like insanely stylish flashback sequence. That's like, you know, what if these splatter Sam Raimi characters all of a sudden were hanging out with Jesus? And also William Sadler fought in like World War I. And so he's like 90 something, and he got passed the flask from the previous Demon Knight because the previous collector tried to attack them in like a trench. Just like crazy mythological lore happening.
Yeah. Yeah. And once again, like even I think they do have Sadler explaining the things, but all of that is just overlaid with these images of Jesus in World War II or World War I and all of that. So it's constantly engaging. It doesn't feel like you're listening to exposition.
Yeah, it feels very slick, very fast paced.
Yeah, it's very fast paced. It never stops. Like whether it's progressing the plot and kind of you're figuring out why this is all happening. You're either getting that information or you're just watching awesome creature effects and Billy Zane being really charming and tricking a bunch of people into killing each other, basically, or killing themselves.
Yeah, all
really.
that stuff. We should talk about that. So that stuff is amazing because I like that. Again, we've mentioned the characters are very much archetypes. And the thing that actually worked for me about that was that over the course of the film, they actually do get surprising amounts of like, I guess, personality or like kind of emotional inner lives. And most of that is through Zane trying to exploit and tempt them. And I do find that it actually kind of lends the character work a little bit more tragedy to it when they are eventually, you know, have their arms ripped off and are gushing blood everywhere to like know a little bit about what it is that they want, what it is, as Melissa said, what their fantasies are. And we get the first bit of that with Zane making his way into the house by possessing Cordelia, who is the prostitute character who's really mistreated by most of the workers and especially the men inside. And he basically does the sequence where he telekinetically is trying to seduce her. And there's like this bright, heavenly, like romantic light coming in from outside.
They have Zane do ADR in his like soft voice, and he's not talking at all. He just looks at her as he's doing it, which is a cool effect.
Seems downright criminal to treat such a pretty girl that way. Yeah. Did I say pretty? I meant
it's like ASMR.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely doing like ASMR. Very funny.
Yeah, and it's so interesting, just, you know, and you know, he's specifically weaponizing, oh, they called you a whore. Well, that is like, what a horrible word that is to use on someone who's just a sad girl looking for love, unconditional love, and I can give you that love. And the amazing just like high angle shot of her looking down outside out the window. Zane almost looks like it looks like he should be
in a romantic
his shirt open, like billowing in the wind, riding on like a white horse or something. You know,
I don't think that's the image, but that's exactly what you think about looking back on it. Like he's just the open white shirt that's
the
like
white,
has frills,
like gauzy, like
Fabio kind of thing. Yeah, exactly.
So good.
And all she has to do is let him in, which she then does because he absolutely tempts her. And she gets to go Night of the Demons mode. She just transforms. Her face rips open. Her tongue is flying out. She's tearing faces off. She's tearing arms off, gushing blood, screaming everywhere. Yeah. Oh my God. When her face splits in two and her tongue is still a hole, like coming in between the middle of them, I was like blown away by that effect. And her obviously getting shotgunned in the back of the head and her eyeballs and goop like flying everywhere out the one side of her
the wall at one point and then slide down. Like it's just so
like, oh my God.
And later on too, just speaking of that same similar effect, there's a kid that comes into play from before. Because Sadler was trying to steal a car and he tells his dad and all that. But anyway, they find the kid and he eventually turns as well into a very similar creature. And you literally watch like a 12-year-old child's face just morph into this disgusting thing. And then he gets kicked out of a window and explodes as soon as he's outside. But the only reason I'm bringing it up now is just because it's a very similar effect and it's very well done. It's awesome.
Well, yeah, he gets to do the giant tongue thing too, but he does something even worse with it, where he slices open William Sadler's chest cavity with it and literally starts licking it.
Right.
The inside of his chest. I was like, stop. Why are you doing this?
God.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it goes back and forth between like Zane trying to paint these really beautiful surfaces, which Dickerson just revels in making them as like so heightened with the billowing curtains and the light rays and just again the colors of it and the steady cam maneuvering that he goes through it, and then all of a sudden interrupting that with just moments of really shocking and gory displays of like creature splatter art, like the one where he tries to seduce Jada Pinkett Smith, and there literally is like billowing curtains straight out of like
that's a music video moment for sure.
Yeah, it reminded me of Tony Scott's The Hunger, the opening scene.
All the floating curtains.
He like hugs her from behind and he's
Yes.
like, oh yeah, I'm promising you the world, baby. Oh man, that would have got me.
Yeah. The room doesn't even make sense. There's like 4 beds, all with curtains just flowing. And, like,
She's like a famous, like, what is it, like actress or something? And there's like, oh, it's so funny.
Yeah.
There's like a smooth like R&B beat kind of going over it.
It's very 90s music video vibes, like in a nutshell.
Yeah.
And she's straight up like
commercial if it wasn't the devil trying to possess her.
100%.
Yeah, and he's like, we can be together and you can travel the world as like this beautiful woman. And then you get these little demon claws like distorting the image of her face that's on the wall and eventually breaking open to reveal Breaker being just torn apart by demons on the other side of it. And he's just like, look,
naked on the wall too.
You can have this thing, but I need this thing. And Billy Zane is there just being like, hey, I'm telling you what the deal is up front, like we're, this is going to be a real relationship that we're going to have. And it doesn't work with him. So he seduces Willie instead. And Willie is a much easier, Dick Miller is much easier to be seduced in this film. It's just naked women holding bottles of alcohol at a tiki bar.
Naked women and
stuff. Yeah. He looks happy. I mean, that'd be a way to go out.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, yeah, and Billy Zane is the bartender. Why don't you suck down on this long, hard one, Uncle Willie?
Oh, that was so good.
And then you get Dick Miller turning into a demon and with the green eyes and throwing Sadler around the room, and he needs to get decapitated, and he's even his body decapitated. He's still strangling people, and they need to gouge his eyes out on like deer antlers to take him down. Every single character in this dies like pretty horribly. Like Thomas Hayden Church gets torn apart after making a deal. Although I do love his deal where he's like, this hell on earth business, a big fucking deal. I've got hemorrhoids.
Bring it on.
Via con Dios.
He's like, I'm
devil.
living it.
Oh my god.
Just gets his chest shredded and sprays blood everywhere. And Zane, to his credit, he's dancing around the rooms. He's snapping his fingers. He's like, "Come on, everybody! Like, time to play with me before getting gruesomely shot in the head with an arrow."
He ate that scene up.
Oh yeah,
he ate the whole movie up.
Yeah, every scene he's like, "I'm gonna chew this as much as I can."
Yes, no, he is just phenomenal. And it all leads to this big final confrontation that we've talked about a little bit, where they end up getting into the attic and the steeple, which they do with a final standoff where the cop and the boarding house owner both like shoot down a bunch of demons and blow themselves up with grenades. And again, it's given a little bit of like, these characters are making altruistic decisions to defend the other people. And especially after too, when the boarding house owner has her arm torn off and is like gushing blood everywhere. And I love that the next...
Or were you about to say the joke where she flips him off, but she uses her arm that is there?
Yes.
Yes.
I love that joke.
And the next scene where they're like, she's very clearly dead in that moment. And the next scene, they're just kind of like sealing her arm up. They're like, yeah, just put some bandages on that. Absolutely what was like leaking, like gushing blood everywhere arm. It's just so graphic and so goofy at the same time, but in a way that it does actually end up kind of selling the danger and the desperation of their situation, that each character dies such a horrible, horrible death that by the time, like Zane and his ghouls, who, they are pretty violent and overwhelming. And when Breaker dies and like hands his keys off to Jada to continue this bleak chase cycle where he's just like, when the stars line up, you'll know what to do. I can't tell you how long you might be waiting a lifetime. Someone's coming for you. And also he's like, this is how I received it. Like in just the worst night of my life, you saw all of these terrible things and this is just the way that it's going to be. And you have to get through it.
Good luck. Yeah.
Yeah, and it leads into this awesome scene where like Jada has to she strips herself down, she covers herself in Jesus blood to take on Billy Zane, which
very Predator.
Yes, which then turns into this crazy scene where it's obviously it's a horror situation, but Zane's also trying to be romantic, and also he's following the rules of the movie where he can't touch the blood, so he like bathes her to get it off of her.
Starts like shoves her into a bathtub that already has a dead body in it that's decapitated. And just starts like cleaning her and just being like, well, I'll just get all this blood off then. I love how practical that solution is.
So good.
He doesn't come up with some like demon magic thing. He's like, I'm just going to throw you in the bathtub. Like we'll get this done easy. No problem.
We're just going to hose you down. And then we're going to do our beautiful
little thing right here.
And I do like that she tries to like apply the whole eyeball thing to him. And he's just like, that eyeball shit only works on low level demons. I know. Who makes up all these rules? I know that this is all totally fucking ridiculous. I'm having a blast with it.
Oh man, it's so great.
Before taking her out to the dancing in the moonlight situation where he is just like pleading her to like join him and love him, and he finally at a certain point, like through all of this the spotlight dancing that they're doing, it's very gorgeous, he gets fed up and he threatens her. He's just like, I'm gonna, that's just it, you aren't taking this great deal to be my demon wife,
but he can't
I'm gonna cut your heart out,
by the way, too.
Right?
I thought that was just funny where he's just like,
like it's so funny.
Can't you see me?
Anyway, Zane is hamming it up so well. He's amazing. He's genuinely amazing to watch, both like physically in this film, like the performance that the way that he's dancing and moving, the way he's delivering his lines. He's fantastic. And how frustrated he gets that she just gives him the silent treatment, where he's like, what, you can't even talk to me? And then she gets close enough where she eventually reveals why she's not talking to him, which she's been holding a mouthful of Jesus blood in her mouth for this entire finale, and she spits it in his face, causing his face to melt like it's had acid thrown on it. He catches fire. He turns into a giant flying demon form for no reason, so that he can just explode.
Just to explode bigger. Just to have a bigger explosion.
Bigger impact.
Oh my god, it's so good.
It's and that is honestly what this movie is up front. Like, it's just things are just happening, they're getting bigger, and because it's fun and it looks amazing and you're having a blast, and I have to respect that is basically the reason that this exists, and you can feel it. Like, Ernest Dickerson is having an incredible amount of fun, and I think it translates to the feeling that you have watching it. Even when he's wrapping it up, it is like, the cycle continues. She gets on a bus and there is a new collector with the same suitcase, and it's connected to the rest of everything else. He's whistling the Tales from the Crypt theme song as he walks along the side of the highway, and then it connects back to the Crypt Keeper, where he's like, oh, and by the way, she lived happily ever after, which is not at all the vibe that and then he's like, anyway, time to go to the film's big screamier, where he gets beheaded by the producers for asking for final cut of the film.
Oh my god, just great. And then he gets another gun and does a maniacal laugh, and we get the theme song in the credits, and it's
that's
a fun
entertainment
time.
Fun ride. It's a quick ride.
I really love this movie. I think it's just an absolute blast, and it doesn't like it. I'm just so happy that you
saw it.
Yeah,
like it's so importantic, and it's so like there's nothing quite like it. Like even Bordello of Blood is great, but it pales in comparison.
I haven't seen that one yet. I'm definitely gonna have to.
Oh, it's
check it
very
out.
fun.
Is this
You know,
was
the
supposed
vampires.
to be a trilogy? At least I see in the wiki, and then this was supposed to be the second one, I think, and they just never ended up making the others. And then Bordello, I think, came kind of like afterwards when this was, I guess, maybe a little successful. So yeah, I need to check that out.
It's definitely fun. It has a similar vibe. It's great. It's just not as perfect as this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe pivoting, I think, towards reductive rating round on this one. This one gets a very, very solid 4 for me. And honestly, this is my first time watching it. I might go back to it and see if I even like it even more, because this is my first even watching a Dickerson film. So I was not like, knowing the films that he shot, this was not at all the film I expected, and he's really good at this style of film. And I'm like, why has he not been able to make, it seems like, more of it? He should have had an entire career of these under his belt. It feels like maybe just because this kind of film was slowly kind of like dying in the 90s, and he should have got started in the 80s or something. I don't know, but yeah, just an incredible cinematographer, known for his passionate and colorful expressionism. He got the chance to make what is like an insane studio horror film, and he, in my opinion, he basically just shot it like he was never going to get another chance at making something like this. And it just, and I think because people assume it's maybe a glorified episode of the TV show and not a script that almost got made independently, maybe that's why it doesn't have as a even better reputation. But yeah, this is at every genre he's trying to do. The siege western, the demon splatter movie, the like Old Testament supernatural war shit that he's doing, he kills all of it. It's gorgeous. The cartoonish camera movement and the canted angles of it, the insanely gleefully graphic monster gore effects with, again, giant tongues going into like exposed chest cavities and shit like that. Just awful stuff to watch, but hilarious. Yeah. And then you have a ton of amazing character actors in this. Again, Dick Miller, Jada Pinkett Smith, Thomas Hayden Church, William Sadler playing off type, and of course Billy Zane, charming pretty boy psycho mode. If you like Dead Calm, this is more of him doing that. And if you like this and you haven't seen Dead Calm, that's also more of him doing something like this. So he's really good at this, and he should have had a career of doing more full-blown psycho stuff that he's doing in this. Like, once again, one line we didn't get to. All right, I know what you're thinking. You give up your soul. You turn into a demon. You look like shit. Where's the payoff, right?
It's so good. Oh my God.
He's amazing, and he's perfectly works with, as we were saying, Nicolas Cage in Brian De Palma's Snake Eyes. Like, he is matching the level of like comic book horror mania that Dickerson is trafficking in here. And again, I thought of filmmakers like a little bit of John Carpenter, a little bit of Sam Raimi, and just blown away by this. And once again, I wanted to reiterate, every movie now 25 pages in, if you're writing a movie, someone needs to get their face punched through and then have that fist get stuck in the head for like a couple minutes while he tries to like shake it off, and he can't get it off, and then he pulls the head off, and
I haven't seen it yet, but I think the Fablemans could have used that for sure.
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely.
Hopefully Bones and All has that.
Yeah, let's hope.
Yes.
I don't have much to add. I agree. I think this is a solid 4. I think this is an amazing film. I love its kind of balancing its tones between just this like wacky, almost dark comedy with the horror elements. I can't believe how gory it is, for also how just cartoonish it is and ridiculous. And I think Billy Zane, everyone is great in this, really, but Billy Zane really takes it. He's just amazing in every single scene. He's eating it up. He's having so much fun. He strikes that perfect balance between he's kind of like mysterious in the beginning and then charming, but still kind of eye-rolly with the puns that comes from, I guess, maybe the more Crypt Keeper elements of this script. Once again, we don't really know how much it was transformed, but it feels
and just sexy. I gotta be honest.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Those
Very
dark eyes,
sexy.
baby. My God.
Woo!
This was
it.
It's a fantastic movie. If you haven't watched it, go check it out. And like Josh said, Dead Calm is another amazing Billy Zane movie. So check them out. Really good.
Yeah, for you, Melissa.
For me, I think I will also give it a 4.5.
Nice.
Hell yeah.
Maybe a 5.
Ooh.
I think, I might give it a 5. Like, I loved it. It's a personal favorite. To me, like, I love horror comedies, but only if they hit the mark. And to me, this was like the perfect marriage of both of those genres. It's a perfect gateway film. It's sexy. It's my humor in a nutshell. It's great. So, for me, 5.
Yeah, I can't wait to just go back to seeing...
Yeah, also most underrated final girl.
Jada's really good in this.
Right? I mean, she's a freaking powerhouse. She's awesome. Like, she's literally a final girl, and I never see her, like, considered as that. And, like, all those generic, like, final girl lists. And I'm like, hello. Like, she's literally a powerhouse, and now she's going to be a hero.
Yeah, she's now the demon knight who's going to have the next like adventure that has all this like comic booky splash pop mania to it. I honestly, they should have made the next one. It should have been a direct sequel.
A comic book. They should do a comic book now. That would be super fun.
Yeah, that'd be fun too.
Yeah, when she comes out, like emerges just covered in the blood, ready to face the collector. It is badass. She has a cool presence.
Yeah. Yeah, and also that powerful silence that ends up being she's got Jesus blood in her mouth the whole time, which is just a ridiculous thing to say, but it actually makes more sense when you watch the movie. But yeah, I think that is going to wrap it up for this week. That was The Gate from 1987, as well as Tales from the Crypt from 1995. Thanks so much, Melissa, for joining us and for bringing these films with you. This is usually the part of the show...
Course.
No problem. This is the part of the show where if you've got anything to plug, we usually have you do that. So what's going on in Melissa World?
Absolutely. You can follow me on Twitter, even though it's dying. So I'll direct you to my Instagram instead, which is my personal Mecha Melissa. And then if you're interested in my mini work, it's going to be under Mecha Minis. I'm actually
which you should be. Go follow both.
I'm working on some Gate minis as we speak. TBD.
Amazing.
So, yeah,
Sick.
if you want to see that, check it out.
Yeah, please go check them out. I show people the little video store ones all the time because I'm just blown away at the level of detail of the little VHS art that you end up putting in there and all the little things that you make, the little popcorn machines and everything. Like, I don't actually understand how it works. I would love to watch like a time lapse video of you making one of these at some point.
Oh, I do have that actually. I have a Patreon where
I need to look at those.
Yeah, I have a Patreon where I show behind the scenes of, I do like whole videos where I show how to make stuff. So.
Oh, sick.
That is awesome. Yeah, well, definitely go check out Melissa's miniatures because they are pretty amazing to look at. And also, Silent Hill coming out.
Yeah, that's so wild.
Next year.
Congrats
Next year,
on that.
Crazy. Yeah, huge congrats.
Thank you. Very excited.
Are you a fan of the movie by any chance?
I am. I think it's really fun.
Me too. Cool.
And they're making a sequel now, right? With the same guy?
Yep.
Christopher
Yeah, that's going to be a
Gans?
new movie. It's going to be great.
That's so crazy.
Very
so
awesome.
Crazy. Well, that is awesome. For our listeners, we are going to be back in 1 week's time over exclusively on the Patreon, where we're going to be doing your patron-voted episode, which I'm sure most of you already know by now. We've been doing it for a couple years, but once every 2 months, the patrons get to vote on an episode. And you choose the double feature. The most upvoted ones get selected, and the one that you picked for us next week is two of our favorite auteur filmmakers getting a little weird and science fiction with it and fantasy with it. We are going to be talking about Michael Mann's The Keep and David Lynch's Dune, two films that maybe don't have the best reputation. I think the patron who voted for it said they're kind of like dark horse entries in their filmographies. They're kind of outliers in that way.
Have you seen Dune?
Do you know what? I have not seen Dune still, even though
sick.
I've read the book and I've watched the new movie.
Yeah.
And I just haven't seen the Lynch Dune yet. So I am very prepared for the Lynch Dune.
Oh, awesome.
And excited because I think that and Whisper this Straight Story are the two David Lynches I haven't seen, and I just don't want to get yelled at for that one.
Well, I haven't
everyone
either.
really loves that one. Yeah. Well, you can yell at both of us.
Exactly.
So we'll be knocking off one of my last, basically like two Lynch blind spots, and we'll be talking about Michael Mann's The Keep, which is last time. It's been many years since I watched this, and the last time I watched it, I liked it. I thought it was very flawed, but I liked looking at it, and I'm very excited to visit it again, especially too because there is actually a 35mm scan of the film, kind of making the rounds on the internet. So it seems to be there is kind of like a new way to check it out that might even look better. So I'm curious how I'm going to respond to it, but it's Michael Mann film without guys feeling sad and shooting each other. So it's not quite it's not that kind of film. So we'll see how it plays out. This is a cool pairing, and I'm excited to get to it next week over on the Patreon. So look forward to that. And then in 2 weeks' time, we are going to be getting into the winter vibes with a special guest, and we're going to be talking about some snowy westerns, two that I haven't seen. We like snowy westerns on this show. The Great Silence, one of our favorite films that we've talked about. And on this episode, we're going to be talking two I haven't seen. One called Track of the Cat, and the other one called Cutthroats 9. Cool. And I'm very excited and. Yeah, and I'm down to get chilly. I'm down to get cold with it.
Absolutely.
And that one's bound to have more dudes feeling sad and shooting each other, I feel like, in those two films. So
sounds like it.
Very curious. But yeah, that's what we're going to be doing in 2 weeks' time. So look forward to that. And then we're going to be heading into the end of the year. Christmas. The best movies of the year.
Oh my God.
These episodes... yeah, sorry, it's on the way. The best genre movies of any given year is always our longest and most listened to episode of the
Somehow,
year.
Yeah.
So Jamie and I are already scribbling and taking notes, and we're going to be watching a ton of stuff. Which, by the way, I will throw this out there as always. If anyone knows of any like small genre films that not many people watched or maybe went direct to video and you feel like they got overlooked, please tell Jamie and I. Most of the genre films are on our list, especially if they got like a wide theatrical release, but it's always possible that something passes by our attention and we didn't see it. So please, if there's like something that you're like, this is in my top 5 and you know that both of us haven't watched it yet, please just message us on Twitter, message us anywhere, Letterboxd, wherever. And we're going to be battening down the hatches and doing nothing but watching genre movies that came out this year to see what makes the top 10. What were the 10 best genre movies that came out this year? Let's find out.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm also just sweating thinking about the runtime, but I'm excited. It's always a fun episode.
Yeah, I don't remember how long last year was. Was it almost 4 hours? I feel like it was almost 4 hours.
It was definitely between 3.5 and 4 hours. I'm almost certain of that.
Yeah, that's messed up. Yeah, it was 3 hours and 40 minutes.
Those honorable mentions a little faster, but we just can't help ourselves. Usually,
yeah,
we literally
we did an hour and a half of honorable mentions last year, so.
Yeah,
we could. I feel like we could maybe get into the top 10 a little earlier than an hour and a half this year. We'll see.
Yeah, no promises at all. This is not us promising fucking anything.
But that being said, that wraps it up for everything this week. Thanks so much for listening, and keep us easy.
Keep it sleazy.